and welcome to our May Microsoft Teams news show. I'm Kieren, and today I'm talking with Tom Arbuthnot from Empowering.Cloud, and together we're diving into all the latest and greatest news in the Teams space. We're also joined by our distinguished panel of Teams experts. A very warm welcome to everybody, and thanks for joining us. Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, nice to have you on the show, Kieren. I see Rob's clearly brought in the A-listers for this one, so I appreciate you joining us.
Well, I'm very excited to make my debut. Hopefully I don't make any slip-ups in the meantime.
We're going to quiz you at the end, Kieren. This is how this works. We do the news, and then we ask you questions at the end. I'm sure you've seen the show.
Absolutely, and hopefully that. But I'm not the best at spontaneous quizzes, but there's always a time to get good at that. I guess just jumping off, it was a week and a half ago we had Microsoft's quarterly earnings. There's some very eye-catching figures, very landmark figures in there. So, Tom, why don't you get us started with that?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to keep an eye on the quarterly earnings because it's interesting because, those figures are very vetted because they're being, announced to the financial community. So they're generally reliable figures. And it's interesting to see what Microsoft are announcing and what they're putting emphasis on. So we got two big numbers in Teams. We got 20 million Teams phone users, which is 30% up year over year. So strong climb trajectory there. And it's worth noting those are active users as opposed to licensed users. So the license number is much higher, but those are actually activated seats. And we got an announcement of 1 million Teams rooms. And the last public figure we had for that was 500,000 in FY23 Q2, which is about January 2023. So again, if you look at the trajectory of that, super impressive how those two numbers have gone up. No numbers in terms of new monthly active users, so we assume it's still hovering around that 320 million monthly active user mark for Teams, but definitely the strong emphasis was on phone and rooms this time. And then on the beyond Teams, on the Copilot side, we obviously had quite a lot of talk on Copilot. We're looking for some hard numbers there, and we didn't get many hard numbers. We got lots of percentages, which is always what you get in the early days of technology. It's up X% on last period, but it's nearly 60% of the Fortune 500 are using Copilot in some shape or form. So that might be GitHub Copilot, might be Copilot with commercial data protection, might be M365 Copilot. Nearly 50% increase in users interacting with Copilot in Teams. There were some big brand names that Microsoft announced as using over 10 or purchasing over 10,000 Copilot seats. So people like BP, Cognizant, Moody's, NVIDIA, and also 30,000 customers are using Copilot Studio, which is Microsoft's ability to create custom Copilots. So that's 175% up quarter on quarter. And another interesting one, more than 65% of the Fortune 500 are using Azure OpenAI service in some way. So that's the OpenAI models, but running on Azure. So some pretty big numbers around that. I'm always looking for actual numbers as opposed to percentages, but Microsoft are clearly pushing very hard on everything AI in the earnings.
Yeah, and Tom, if I could just kind of build on that, because I think it's fascinating. I always try to read the transcript, and even if I listen to the call, because I think you can kind of read through and kind of pick up some of the detail. So as part of that, I did a quick kind of search, and so Copilot was mentioned 47 times in the quarterly financial call, and AI was mentioned 75 times. So clearly, a focus of Microsoft. And in fact, when Satya started talking, in his first sentence, he talks about the Microsoft Cloud, which was 35 billion of revenue, up 23%. But then in the second sentence, he connects the results to Copilot and what he now and Microsoft seems to be calling the Copilot stack. So I know at CommsV Next, you counted the number of Copilots, and I did that previously before at Enterprise Connect. So I guess now the Copilot stack is everything that encompasses, Copilot SKUs and Copilot capabilities. But, I found that interesting. So by the second sentence of the earnings call, they're saying cloud is up, but really it's as a result of, this AI and Copilot growth. And the other thing that I found very interesting is Amy Hood, who is the CFO for Microsoft. I mean, she noted that currently near-term AI demand exceeds Microsoft's capacity. And so she clarified when she was asked the question, it isn't so much around Copilot, but it's around organizations using those Azure AI cognitive services. And so as part of that, I mean, she had indicated that Microsoft was likely to make in FY25, which starts halfway through kind of the calendar year 2024, that they're likely to make more investments in AI infrastructure and the tooling than they did in FY24. So 100% Microsoft is, I don't know, doubling, tripling down on AI services. And I think in the team space, Microsoft has always moved up the stack. They start at the operating system level, then kind of Windows, and then Office, and then Teams was the hub where work gets done. And I would say for Teams professionals, I mean, like AI looks like, kind of moving up again in the stack. And so, maybe we end up in several years just talking to our AI assistant and we don't worry about the individual apps like Teams and what have you. I mean, for the here and now, obviously Teams is core, but maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 years from now, maybe we'll have a different discussions. So that was kind of the deeper kind of insights that I took away from that call.
Yeah, it does feel like Microsoft have definitely bet a lot on AI being a key part of the future, if not the future of a lot of technologies. And you say there, we talk a lot about OpenAI and the relationship there, but they're running multiple models in Azure. They'll host any model you want as far as that piece goes. So they want to be the underlying infrastructure, regardless of whether you're using their Copilot products or whether you're using them as a platform.
I mean, I think Star Trek, predicted this long ago. People didn't sit in front of a computer on the ship to do things. They just started talking to the onboard AI to get what they needed. That was the interface. So maybe you're onto something there, Kevin. Windows what? It's all Copilot from now on.
Copilot Tana.
Yeah, I think Star Trek predict all kinds of things, right? So it's just like Gene Roddenberry had deep insight into the future.
We'll return to Microsoft in AI towards the end of that and end of the call, because there's a very interesting rumor or maybe a educated guess going around at the moment after an information reported. But moving on to Teams rooms for now, as you know, we had the very compelling figure of 1 million plus MTR users, and now we also have this massive update, this Teams rooms and Windows 5.0 update. Tom, what are some of your favorite new features from this?
Yeah, so I'll definitely refer to Josh and Randy and Graham to pick out their features as well. But we're moving from the 4.x train to 5.0 on Teams rooms on Windows. So there's a significant number of features coming in. We're moving to the new Teams 2.1 client, so the client that rolled out for users on the desktop last month kind of was the big cutover. So hundreds of billions of users now using that new client. That will be the base client for the Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows as well. No massive changes there, but it does optimize some intelligent audio scenarios and rendering scenarios. QR code meeting join, so having a QR code on the screen. And I really like this. So, at the moment we can forward emails to the room to join, we can type in codes, but being able to run up with your mobile and just scan the QR code and either join a meeting that you already have in your diary on your personal mobile, or to start an ad hoc session and join in companion mode. That's really nice. There's autopilot comes into preview, which is a fast deployment model, a bit like imaging laptops, but you can image rooms with the credentials and everything else, kind of sub 15-minute deployment, which is really nice. And then some smaller things. We've got meeting chat shown by default in gallery view, 4K native display support. So that's not 4K video, but that is 4K screens rendering at native 4K. Option to add secondary passcodes to join meetings. So if you think about having a meeting room in a public area, you can invite it, but when you click to join on the screen, you have to have the passcode for that meeting to join it as well. toggling IntelliFrame on and off, another little feature there, and language selection on Teams rooms as well. I'll throw to the floor here. I don't know, Josh, Randy, Graham, anything stand out for you on that side of it? And Graham, I'd love to hear what's happening on the Android side as well.
Yeah, Tom, I think you just nailed about everything on the list. Thanks a lot. That's but I mean, one thing that does stand out to me though is a moment of silence appears to be needed as Skype for Business deprecation is on that list.
It's officially off now, so you have to stay on 4.x if you're running Skype server, which is there's still people out there, but they're now they're gone officially.
Exactly. That's they announced it previously, and so this update actually brings about the retirement of Skype for Business meetings on Teams rooms. So there's that. But speaking on the IntelliFrame piece that you mentioned, I think that's a big deal. It's cool that IntelliFrame is out there, but if you're wanting to use the experiences on a particular room system that you have opted into as an organization, right? Maybe you like the way that OEM does meeting equity, and so maybe you want to turn off IntelliFrame. The ability to kind of control that experience in the room is a big deal. And I'll point back at what you already said on the languages. For a global company out there that has offices all over the world, that can be a pretty big deal to be able to go into a room and quite easily change that room to the language you need it to be. And it does note in the meeting notes that I think it says after restart or the next meeting. I forget what the exact notes were on there, but it's a more of a on the go. I'm coming into the room. I want it to be in this language. So it's a convenience for those that need that aid in room. Those are the things that jumped out to me.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is the QR code. The QR code that when it showed up on panel was fantastic. The ability to actually just drop in and schedule a meeting with that room. A competing product does it a slightly different way, where you actually go into the UI and actually choose you as the user that's organizer, and you can email things out and things. But you've already scheduled it, or maybe you've got a better workflow to actually do it in the Teams client anyway. So yeah, just being able to do a QR code for that was great. But on Teams rooms, it's even better. It's the same thing on Android, which I'll let Graham cover in a second. But that use case is massive. Being able to QR code to cast. We all know that proximity join and the casting kind of app that lives in the Teams client is a little bit hit and miss. There are plans to go through ultrasonic instead of Bluetooth, which is I think the problem child for a number of reasons I won't go into. But being able to cast, being able to schedule an ad hoc meeting, or schedule a meeting with that room, or just drop in and do stuff is massive on that QR code front. And the language thing, as you said, the language picker, it just seems like it should have been there all along. Having to go in and change the Windows language, for such a fundamental change for, as Josh said, a multinational organization where you might have a bunch of people from different origins and things in the same office, but you as a user can just rock up, press the language thing, and change it to a different English or something. I think there's like 35 Englishes in the picker, which is ridiculous. But you get my point. And no Klingon, unfortunately. But I guess we'll
give it time.
Give it time. Yeah.
But yeah, also an interesting one. So just to follow on from what Randy mentioned on the QR code, I think something that's really good inside the room is that it's cross-tenant. So if you've got a guest in your room, they can scan it with their Teams client and join their meeting. Whereas the booking panels outside the room is purely for internal bookings. So it's a great development inside the room. But another one I want to bring up is, you mentioned the Skype for Business. How long is that going to be around for? Because the current support model is N-2, is it?
Yeah.
On the app version?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. I've got a couple of customers I'm talking to at the moment to find out what the official stance is on that, because presumably they are supported for a while longer when they've invested in that hardware. So yeah, once I find out, I'll add it to one of the updates.
And then Android news, from the recent update this month, that's pushed into TAC now, Teams Admin Center, again, is that alignment between Android and Windows. So it's had a whole UI refresh. So now it matches the Windows MTR exactly. So the calendar is on the right-hand side. We now get 6 icons. So you get the join by ID on the home screen. And also you get the QR code. So again, this is Microsoft delivering features for both platforms at once. So it's sort of a cloud-based feature, and they enable it in the client. So again, users shouldn't have to choose, okay, in our small and medium rooms, we're going Android, and our large rooms, it's Windows. Now the UI is exactly the same across the platform, so users shouldn't get confused, what room they're in. They just walk in and they find the buttons in the same place. So again, a whole host of features have been rolled out, such as, securing it with an extra passcode as well. So again, if you've got rooms in public spaces, someone can't just go and join the board meeting. They'll need to know the passcode to join.
Yeah.
So again, features rolled out both Windows and Android at the same time. And then some things that have been announced, actually, again, it says for all Teams rooms. This is a roadmap item, and this is a single stream audio for intelligent recap. So when we talk about Copilot and meeting transcriptions, Microsoft have now worked out a way to do it without having a special, speaker puck, which they had in the past. So really looking forward to that coming out shortly.
Yeah, some nice additions on the Android side as well, definitely.
I mean, the biggest thing for me on aligning the Teams 5 and the Android 2.2 is the fact that they look almost identical. That's been such a long time. Trying to educate users. Having to go into one and go, ooh, the buttons are in a different place, or are the calendars on the wrong side, or there's a number of different kind of UI things. But now they're virtually identical, which is a huge win for adoption people and that sort of thing. They only need to make one set of A-fold cards or something. A Teams room is a Teams room is a Teams room, basically.
And I think it's going to be interesting, Randy. You mentioned earlier something that should have been there a long time ago. Things like the language switching, being able to do that. I feel like a lot of us feel like a consistent UI should have been a thing a long time ago, right? And now that we're there, and now that we're starting to see a little bit more of a cohesive solution that's easier for adoption, and the fact that we have the greater macro economy starting to thaw out a bit on various levels, the fact that Teams rooms doubled in number practically over the course of the last year, I'm very interested to see what a year from now we're looking at with those numbers. I think that a lot of these items are going to lend themselves to a larger uptick in Teams rooms. But
we're at 1 million rooms now.
Well, sticking with Teams rooms for just one more story, it was another eye-catching one. Was this Pro Portal remote access? What would you guys just say this is specifically, and how can it support Teams admins?
Yeah, so this is the ability to remotely log on to a Teams rooms from the Pro Portal. So you need that Pro license. So some OEMs have had this capability through their third-party tooling, like Crestron XIO. You can see the console, you can click the buttons, and the same type of capabilities are coming through natively on the Pro Portal. So you'll be able to do this on any Windows 11 Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows, have the remote control. There are some specific requirements. I think I've linked a PDF in the show notes so you can see the requirements. You do need a particular, I think it's a VS Code plugin or pack
Studio,
running as well. To Visual Studio plugin to do it. But nice to see that natively after, again, one of the things that a lot of admins have asked for a while is that remote control. Also, you can't do it during a call. You can only do it when the system's at rest as well. So worth noting that.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that's one of the big concerns that gets brought up often when you bring up the possibility or the notion of remote control is, well, what could someone do with that, and how could that interrupt operations? So knowing that you have that in place, reading through that document makes it feel like you have to go through 15 different gates to be able to actually get this up and running in the first place, right? So it's not like it's going to accidentally get switched on and start causing chaos. There's a lot of very purposeful steps there, but the fact that you can't interrupt ongoing meetings is another big deal, and those that are adopting Android should be happy to know that while this is a Windows facing solution at the moment, Android has a coming soon marker on that for what it's worth in the document. So
I'll play devil's advocate on the can't join it during a call, though. some people use remote control features to actually do that, old school camp inside the room or camp outside the room to troubleshoot, kind of notion.
Yeah, the remote white glove kind of scenario.
The remote white glove kind of thing, yeah. So some might say that that's a bit of a a letdown, but as Tom said, all the OEMs, three of which are here, have got solutions for remote control onto the devices.
I think they're just being smart with it. I think that what Microsoft's going to do is come out and say, for an additional Pro license, you can get white glove service.
Pro squared. Yeah, I imagine the pressure that it's not technically infeasible, right? Because they've done it. It's the business risk of spying and all that kind of stuff. I think they're just taking a safely route with that one. But yeah, I hear the use case too of people wanting to be able to join, like mid-meeting, I can't see what's going on. Can you tell me what's going on?
But I also think, a lot of enterprises have already gone down the route of their own third-party management tools because they're managing 100,000 laptops or 10,000 laptops already with a solution, and they've just applied that to their MTRs. So it's a nice to have, I think, and I think obviously it's a certified solution. Whereas putting your own third-party software on the MTR, that could be, it's not my problem. You put a third-party solution on.
Great, and there's a moving on to a couple of Copilot stories. I think a really compelling one was this restricted SharePoint Search began rolling out in public preview for Copilot for Microsoft 365. Tom, how exactly does restricted SharePoint Search work with Copilot?
Yeah, this is a big one actually. It's an interesting one. So lots of enterprises are nervous about rolling out Copilot because it will use essentially Microsoft Search to index all the data across all the SharePoint that's accessible to the users. And while it is technically accessible to the users today, many customers are worried about that they've got lots of old data there. They might have inappropriate data shared. Theoretically, the HR department might have shared Excel files years ago that nobody knows about, but they are technically accessible to users and therefore accessible to Copilot. So while customers are nervous, this gives them an option to admin approve list certain SharePoint sites to be indexed and therefore to be available in Copilot. So the idea is this is a temporary measure that ultimately you get your governance in order, but it unblocks customers to say, I trust these 10 sites. This is our intranet site. This is our documentation site. We know these are known good, and allow Copilot to proactively access that data and present it to users. So a nice unblock for the enterprise customers rolling out Copilot.
It was a smart move, I think. One of the big pushbacks against AI or solutions with AI, large language models, et cetera, is just how fast the data is sprawling and that we are losing track of where the data is, where it's accessible, having a hard time wrapping our minds around it as it is. The technology is growing way faster than we can keep up on the compliance side. So putting a stopgap measure in place to say, whoa, let's slow down. Let's kind of restrict things to a reasonable level while we figure out the real plan moving forward without taking away our ability to adopt this new technology. That was a good move because, like you said, it's not meant to be the permanent fix here for this. Proper compliance is the way to go. But it's great that they've identified the problem and said, here's a way you can kind of stop the bleeding, if you will, while you fix the problem overall. But
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's always like a timely reminder that we are still in the baby steps phase of AI in so many ways, especially for enterprise use. And sticking with Copilot, there's another new capability that's been released that's very eye-catching. Was this new notebook for Copilot on the web? This sounds interesting at face value, but what exactly is it, and how does it work in practice?
Yeah, the naming is a bit curious here because obviously we've got OneNote, we've got Loop, we've got Notepad for some people. Like, is this another way to take notes? And it's not really. It's actually a kind of interactive interface to help you refine and come back to your AI prompts. So think of it like a personal notebook for your prompts. It gives you kind of a 2-panel interface. So this is on the Copilot web interface, so the copilot.microsoft.com on the web version. And I think it's kind of respecting that users have to tune and save their different prompts. So you can save different topics, you can refine the prompts, you can rerun them. Early days, this just came out, literally days ago, but interesting to see a bit more power around being able to save and refine your prompts.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's nice to see Microsoft experimenting. I mean, the same thing with that restricted, SharePoint search. I mean, they're listening to customers, they're responding quickly and trying different things. You certainly could save prompts and share prompts between people, and there was the Copilot Labs that has a bunch of prompts, and so this is an interesting mechanism. I know we were talking before we started recording, Tom, and both you and I, it wasn't exactly clear where you find this, and it was, specifically if you've got the commercial data protection, so you have a Copilot license, you have to be on the web piece, and so it'll be interesting to see how regular users both find and make use of this particular capability. But I think it's nice to see Microsoft across all their different Copilots, iterate and experiment. That being said, having different experiences in different Copilot windows, I wonder, it has a tendency to confuse regular users and even people like ourselves that spend a lot of time, playing with Copilot. So I think early days, but nice experimentation.
Aren't we up to something like 18 Copilots now, or is it more?
Tom counted 20, and Tom's next, right?
Yeah. I started counting the ins and the fours. So the fours are the add-on products, and the ins are like, in Word, in Excel. I think since that presentation, I found a couple more as well.
Okay.
I'm halfway through putting them on our research area in the community area to do like a table of every Copilot. So but I'm setting myself up for some serious homework.
Yeah, it's crazy. And to have a scratch pad to be able to, as you said, save prompts and things, it just seems to me almost like junior dev kind of thing. Imagine Stream Deck with a page on Copilot prompts to be able to just mash at something and get at that prompt that you do regularly. Hey, copy this text, summarize it, make it look smarter or something, and spit it out to something else.
No, and I think that's a great point, Randy. The challenge is it's only available in some of the Copilot windows, right? So it's like, and I would say like Copilot Labs has some great ideas as well, but I don't know that a lot of people click on the, kind of the little icon to access Copilot Labs, because, one of Karuna had a session at CommsV Next that I thought was very insightful, because she spoke about with Copilot rolling it out to cohorts as opposed to a traditional pilot where you might say, hey, if I'm going to pilot Teams Phone, I'm going to give it to a few people in each department. And she really talked about, like, if you've got 20 Copilot licenses, or Copilot for M365 licenses specifically, maybe give them to 20 people in sales so that they can learn and share different prompts amongst themselves, right? So I think the notebook is interesting, but it's still very much an individual type capacity or capability. So, maybe the future would be, hey, we're a group and we could share kind of prompts that work great.
Yeah, I'd love to see
business,
that. That's
right?
a really good idea.
So there is a one of the Microsoft's, I think it's CSU, Stuart Rideout. Someone wrote a Power app, so you can add it to a channel, so you can then do exactly that, share all your different prompts. Hey, I found this one. Why don't you try this? Which is a great way of sharing the knowledge base, because there's so much out there.
That's a great idea, Graham. Yeah, thanks for. Maybe we could put a link to, if we can find it, a link to that.
We'll find the link for Stuart's project. That's a good idea.
So I was just going to say, it sounds like we need a Copilot for Copilot in a sense.
Yeah, we really do. Well, the funny thing is, I started off by asking Copilot how many Copilots there were and didn't get a very satisfactory answer. So,
as long as they don't make a device that says, hey, Copilot, and doesn't go off all the time.
Don't say it, Graham. Don't say it.
Yeah, it'll happen. Awesome. So, rounding out Copilot, we're going to get onto our juicy rumor, Kieren.
Yeah, very, very exciting. So last night, the publication information reported that Microsoft is working on its own large AI model to potentially rival those of OpenAI's Anthropic and, of course, Google's with their Gemini, and how Gemini has been really centered in on the last few months. Microsoft have formally declined to comment to several outlets, but it is out there, and Microsoft CTO Kevin Scott commented on LinkedIn to read between the lines, say, of course, this is happening, but it doesn't mean anything is palpably different with our relationship with OpenAI. What do you guys think of this? This is in a way, it seems quite common sense that this is going on, but to have an actual tangible example out there seems quite seismic.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's no surprise that Microsoft are working on this. And they were working on this before the OpenAI relationship, right? They have Microsoft Research, they've been doing models, they've even got, papers and things that go back, a while. But this is interesting because it seems to be squarely saying it will be of the equivalent power and capabilities of Anthropic and OpenAI, which is not something that Microsoft have demoed to date. They did hire Mustafa Suleyman, and most of his team got acquired as part of that as well. So they've got a really strong team there, although that's a relatively recent addition, so this has probably been going on longer. But I think Microsoft want to quite smartly hedge their bets, right? OpenAI had that big kind of political wobble earlier, and Microsoft have pumped many billions in that direction, so they need to have options if anything were to happen. And I think, unsurprising, it'll be interesting to see if we hear any announcement from Build about what the capabilities are.
It's got a lot to live up to. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really tried any of these other rival products or anything. Maybe this stuff in Zoom and bits and pieces here and there, but they're all vastly different. Even the way Microsoft has iterated with 20-something co-pilots, to be able to bring all those co-pilots into, whatever the back end is going to be with Microsoft is a big risk, given that, ChatGPT 4 or 5, whatever the thing is, seems to be doing pretty well in a lot of cases.
Yeah, Sam Altman seems to think that he did a talk a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, GPT-4 is nothing compared to 5. Like, it's the stupidest thing you'll ever use compared to 5.
4 is the best thing in the world, since 3 was like a toddler.
Exactly,
The leaps are huge.
If the jump from you're right. If the jump from 3 to 4 is the same from 4 to 5, that'll be really interesting.
Yeah.
But Microsoft, I don't think Microsoft will wed themselves to any one model. They're running all the open source models as well as part of a service. So great to see more skin in the game, I guess.
Like I think what you're seeing organizations that are kind of on the leading edge figure out is, okay, what model am I going to use for the appropriate use case, including, and Microsoft Research has some great papers and some great videos around, when do you want to use a small language model because you can run it on the edge, right? Like, so from, the people representing devices here, I mean, a lot of times you don't want to send things up to the cloud either because you don't want to send biometric information up to the cloud, or because you don't want to deal with the latency. So you can run small language models, and no one really knows when something becomes a small, when does it bridge from a small to a medium to a large, and does 1.8 trillion parameters give you better than allegedly this new model might have 500 million parameters? And so I think there's a lot of work going on to optimize what language model makes sense. And so, if you look at Mustafa Suleyman, I mean, he's the co-founder of Google DeepMind, which did all that whole AlphaZero, AlphaFold, some really cool stuff. I mean, he wrote a book called The Coming Wave, which I would say read, although it's a slightly depressing, but I think also realistic in terms of the risks to, that AI and synthetic biology combined may have for society overall. But he created this inflection.ai model, and you can still go to it. His assistant was called Pi, and it was really focused on being more empathic, so emotional quotient as opposed to intelligent, kind of just IQ, so EQ versus IQ. And so I think, probably we may see this coming into this new model and being used in specific use cases inside the whole Microsoft 365 suite. And so, like you, Tom, when you asked Copilot how many Copilots there were, I asked the Inflection.ai assistant, which they call Pi. I said, there's a rumor Microsoft is creating its own LLM, perhaps called MAI-1. Do you think this model will incorporate more empathic EQ training that Mustafa has talked about? And could MAI-1 stand for Mustafa AI version 1? Because he's now become this new corporate vice president. And so here was the response. And, once again, I think you see a little bit different. So it said, wow, it seems you're really in the know about the latest rumors. I haven't heard anything specific about Microsoft creating an LLM called MAI-1, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were working on something like that, especially with Mustafa Suleyman on board. Given Mustafa's past work with DeepMind and Inflection AI and his emphasis on empathy in AI, it's certainly possible that MAI-1, if it exists, might incorporate EQ training. And the idea MAI-1 standing for Mustafa AI version 1 is a really interesting theory. But remember, this is all speculation at this point, which I thought was a phenomenal answer, right? Yeah. I mean, a great answer. So anyway, I think we're going to see everybody trying to fine tune which models make sense. And the other point real quickly is I think people underestimate the value of grounding, right? Because one of the things that Copilot does, and the reason there's 20 different Copilots, is it feeds a lot of different grounding information in, so contextual information along with your prompt. And that's why the Teams Copilot is the best, because it really is a true AI assistant. It feeds in previous chats, emails, meetings, etc. But, and then the web one uses web grounding. But like when you're in a meeting, I think people don't understand it's only looking today at the transcript. So I think the model, but equally important is the grounding, the context information. And I think we're going to see a huge improvement in that contextual information that's also fed in with your prompt. And that'll make all the Copilots smarter.
Yeah, imagine, Kevin, though. I mean, we talked about the GitHub thing from Stuart Rideout. We talked about it during this thing. If this was a Teams thing using Copilot, and we've got the recap going, and it just surfaced that link that Graham managed to find and ping in our side chat, just for context.
And that's where it needs to go, Randy. And today it's only looking at the transcript. I mean, Microsoft has said it'll look at the chat. So if one of us knew, I mean, maybe. I don't believe it's not doing that, at least in general availability now. But, it's not looking at your calendar. It's not looking at the graph in the meeting. And so it doesn't know if I say Graham, it doesn't know what Graham I'm talking about, right? But that whole grounding, to your point, Randy, that's going to make the models appear smarter, right? Because that's going to improve the results.
Yeah, the more information it has access to. I mean, we talk about, the actions are due on Wednesday next week. Let's check everybody's calendar, and it goes off and checks people's calendars and say, Wednesday's not good unless you want to do it after hours, maybe Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, everybody seems to be good. Just bringing stuff like that back is even more valuable than it already is.
Great. Shall we discuss some upcoming events in the team's calendar? Tom, what are the events that have really caught your eye for the coming month?
Yeah, so we've had quite a lot recently. We just had CommsV Next and the Microsoft Community Conference as well. We've got a lot coming in May. We've got the European Collaboration Summit. I'll be out there talking about Teams ecosystem. That's May 14th to 16th. We've got our regular Microsoft Teams devices, Ask Us Anything online. So we'll be going through all those Teams rooms updates in a bit more detail there. I think we're actually doing a live demo of the Pro Portal remoting as well. Microsoft Build, which is Microsoft's big developer conference. So that is 21st to 23rd of May. And again, we'll likely hear something more of those AI models at that point. UCX Manchester in the UK, that's a UC and digital transformation conference, doing a session there with Martin Boehm all around Teams roadmap and Copilot roadmap. And looking a bit further out to June, we have Juan Riviera, who's one of the CVPs at Microsoft on Teams Fireside Chat. So really looking forward to getting into that as well.
Perfect. Well, that's all from us. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully, as a long-time viewer, first-time host, I've managed to step into Rob's shoes reasonably well. And if you want,
We've run out of time for the quiz, Kieren. Unfortunately,
that's such a shame. You'll have to the next time. You can do it this beginning of the next time I host. The night when other people's internets are collapsing. Well, and if you want to be part of this conversation, you can connect with Tom, myself, Rob, and our guest speakers on LinkedIn and X, and our social links are in the description. Thanks to Tom and our guest speakers, and to everyone for joining us. We'll be back again next month with another essential drop of Microsoft Teams news. Thanks for watching.